Yo.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, Malcolm? How are you?
All right, cool. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Without further ado, what happened to you?
Uh, well, when I was a kid, I had cancer when I was like three, till right when I was like five. So I had Wilms tumor. It's like a type of kidney cancer.
Wilms tumor?
And Wilms tumor, yeah.
Gotcha.
And I had my kidney removed. And then I went through chemo, like radiation and all that. And sorry if you heard that
You're
notification.
good. No worries.
Yeah, so basically what happened was I was getting like pains in my abdomen, my lower region, and my mom went to go like get tests for it and they said everything was fine. And then my mom was at like a soccer game or something and was talking to some mom who was like an oncologist, and she was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound right. Send like his results my way." So my mom got my test results and like sent them over to her, and she was like, "Oh, like he fully like has cancer." Then I went to the hospital, and it happened so fast. Like that night, I started doing chemo and like radiation, and
Damn.
yeah. And then it came back a second time on my liver, and I had half my liver removed.
Oh
Yeah,
shit. So 3 to 5, you had kidney cancer.
basically, yeah. I'd say the first year from like three to four, I was dealing with the whole kidney cancer stuff,
Hmm.
and then like I don't really remember this part as much, but like then I guess there was like a little bit of a period where I didn't have it, and then like it just came back on my liver, which is like really common. But there's not really a name for it once it comes back. It's just it comes back. So like I fucking had half my liver removed. Yeah,
Shit.
I got make a wishes like two. It was pretty. It was.
You
I
got
have
the
a joke
double
about that.
make-a-wish?
Yeah, I have a joke about that where I was like, it's pretty sick, like having cancer as a kid, because they like paid for everything. Like this big, massive Disney trip where I was in this really nice hotel, really nice car rental. I had to skip all the lines. Like I had to go on a ride. If I got on a ride, I could say I wanted to be on it by myself, and like I could go. And like then it would come back and they'd be like, "How was it?" And I'd be like, "Good, I want to go again." And they'd be like, "All right," and I would go again. And it was like they would shut down. Like if I was literally like, "I want Epcot to myself for the day," they would have done it.
If
And
you want what to yourself?
Epcot, it's like the park in Disney.
Oh shit. Were people in
Honestly,
line? Did you do that? Were you just ripping the same ride
yeah,
over?
yeah, yeah. I remember like passing kids in the line and like kids just looking at me like, "Oh, dude, I hope this kid dies." Like, fuck you, bro. And And like I went on the Jaws ride at Universal, and I'm wearing a shirt that says like Make a Wish Kid, but I'm too young to really realize that. And on the ride, like I guess the woman riding the boat is supposed to take out like a fake shotgun, and she's like, "Guys, I got this," and like kills the sharks. But
Yeah.
on our ride, she's like, "Guys, there's a shark in the water. Can anyone help? Your name's Malcolm, right?" I'm like a 5-year-old, and she gives me this like realistic looking shotgun, and they like hold me up, and I'm like shooting these fucking sharks. And at the end, I remember being like, "Yo, like, how did you know my name?" She was like, "That's the magic of Disney." I was like, "No, it's not. It's because I'm a Make a Wish kid, and you fucking know." I think Make a Wish was like pissed that I lived. I think they were like, "Holy fuck! Like, we invested so much money into this kid's Make a Wish." And he fucking lived. And before the Disney Make a Wish, I also got to go to Sesame Street.
No
And I
fucking
remember
way.
like, yeah, I was really young, but I remember being at Sesame Street and like meeting all the people. One of the guys that I actually like really met, he was a human on the show. Like he played a character. Like he didn't use a puppet. His name was Mr. Noodles, and he was in.
Dude, I know that guy.
Okay. I have a photo with that guy. Like I was in his little Mr. Noodles thing.
I think my grandma was Mr. Noodle's assistant, or like she worked with him, or she has some relationship with him.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I
yeah.
absolutely know Mr. Noodle. And I
I remember
remember
meeting
watching
the
him.
Elmo guy, and then like years later, it came out that he was like a pedophile, and I was definitely like
What?
left alone. I
What the?
was definitely like, oh yeah, the guy that voiced Elmo is a huge pedophile, like the
Oh, not
original
Mr.
Elmo.
Noodle.
No, not Mr. Noodle,
Oh,
but
okay, good.
Elmo, which is like
Whew. Still though, fuck. I didn't know. I didn't no idea. Elmo's a pedophile.
It's so funny that we're like, thank God the side character on Sesame Street, Mr. Noodle. I don't give a fuck about the lead character.
Yeah, fuck
But
Elmo, dude.
yeah,
That's so wild. I had no idea.
insane. But I got to do both of those things, and
So Disney was the first one, the first Make-A-Wish.
no, the first one was Sesame Street.
First one was Sesame Street, and then you beat cancer, and then it came back, and you think Make-A-Wish was like, God damn it. Like, this guy's draining our funds.
Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, everything I just told you is true, but I guess the real order is, like, the second time around, I don't know how it works. Like, they gave it to me, and we waited. Like, so I had hair and shit. I was in kindergarten, like in class when I went to Disney. Like, I think it was actually more confusing for people because I look like a normal kid when I went to Disney. Like, I think they give it to you and you can use it whenever you want.
Right. And the idea, it's just most people would use it right away because it could be terminal or whatever. Right. You want to
But I think my parents were kind of like, well, hold on. We wasted the first one on Sesame Street. Oh, I gotta add that. That's actually kind of funny.
That's a good tag. Yeah, you should, dude. That's a fucking. Isn't it crazy that like it seems like the funniest jokes are just true. Like, I mean, there's like variations of it, like but the reality is, it's like what's going on in your head at that time is so funny. I was gonna ask, like, what are like the limits of Make-A-Wish? Do they have like a budget?
Yeah, definitely. There was a kid that asked for a hooker once. I remember that was like a nasty. Like, there was definitely a kid that was like, "I want a prostitute," and they were like, "There's no," which is such a weird thing because like you could literally get a prostitute for much cheaper than you don't need. Like,
I don't think it's the price saving that Make-A-Wish is worried about.
Yeah, I don't know what the price cap is. If you had a Make-A-Wish, what would it be?
I don't know. That's one of the unfortunate downsides of child molestation is you don't get a Make-A-Wish, you just get a fucking pair of Heelys. But it still was pretty sick at the time. I probably would have wanted to like go like meet a soccer team. Like, I've always been like super big into soccer, and I think it would be sick to like maybe go to the World Cup or like just meet like David Beckham or somebody like that.
So I know a kid who was obsessed with The Simpsons, and they fucking flew him out, and he was in the Simpsons movie.
What?
Yeah, they put him into the Simpsons movie as like he has a one-line thing, and then he went to the premiere and like walked the red carpet with them, and that was the other thing. It was like being at the hospital. At the hospital, tons of kids would have like athletes come. So like Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, like they were always coming. I don't really remember meeting them as much, but like they were always coming. Like, my dad has stories of like walking down the hallway and seeing like Allen Iverson, and it was like the day after like he had scored a buzzer beat. It was like the day after the finals or something. I don't know. Like,
that's so sick.
Weird. Yeah.
So you kind of got like the trickle off of like the other Make-A-Wishes too. If people did something like that, they would stop by your room too.
Yeah, pretty much. But I remember thinking like that Simpsons one was so sick. Like,
yeah, that's a production. I mean, and then to do the red carpet too, like that's fucking. What did that kid have? What do you have to get a fucking spot in the Simpsons movie?
I think he had leukemia. So like it was a weird coincidence. Like my cousin had a she's older, like 5 years older than me, but she had a best friend who was diagnosed with childhood cancer. And we grew up in South Jersey outside of Philly, and Philadelphia has the #1 children's hospital in the world. And it also has the #1 children's cancer department in the world.
Whoa.
So like her friend was in the, like, it's weird. Like her best friend also had cancer, and he was like 5 years older than me. But my mom also knew that kid's mom because the moms all kind of knew each other.
Sure.
He passed away, but he had it years after I survived. Like I went to my cousin Sydney's bat mitzvah, and he was there, and he had cancer. So when he had done that movie, he had done that like when he was like 13.
Wow.
But he had it since he was like 4 or 5, something like that.
It seems like it's sort of one event, but if you can make that event drag on, you can really milk it. That seems to be yeah, not that Sesame Street wasn't sick, but maybe your parents were right on holding off on the second
Yeah, I
Make-A-Wish till
know,
you were
right?
older. Yeah. Dude,
I
that's
know.
funny as hell. When did you start doing stand up about it?
Very recently, like right before Corona.
Oh damn, this is fresh.
Yeah, right before Corona. Because I know we had talked yesterday about it, but I'll just go like I had just been doing jokey jokes for a while, like forever, and I
Yeah.
was just so like not happy about it. And like I had done that Broadway comedy showcase
Yeah.
audition.
Yeah.
That's like a real thing. Like they do actually pick people that get the residencies who I've now see have done like bigger things.
Hmm.
And so I tried out for it and like I did have a great show. Like I did have a great performance out of most of the comics there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just remember thinking like, damn, like I'm not really doing what I want to do. And then I read Tiffany Haddish's book where Richard Pryor was kind of like came to her class that she was taking, and he had said like if you're like this sounds cheesy, but like if you're not having fun up there, like then what's the point of doing this?
Definitely.
Yeah, so like I've always that's always like stuck with me since then because every time I perform stand up since then I've been like that wasn't fun. Well, it's fun, but it was always just felt more of like a performance where I want to get to the point where it just feels like this, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's the goal, is just being able to talk how you talk normally on stage and like not having it feel any different.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. And I felt like the first set that I did in stand up was about molestation. And
Okay.
so I did that and I just fucking bombed for like 4 months straight. And then I wasn't only doing that set after the first time, and I felt like I was trying to fit into that like jokey joke world and
Yeah.
just like set up punchline, and it wasn't fun. Like it's fun to talk about the things that are unique to you and things that are real, you know, like rather than just like fabricating some sort of a joke. I feel like it's fun to talk about the things that are unique to you, and especially when people can relate to those things.
Yeah.
Um, so have you, I know it's you started doing it recently, but has anybody who has had cancer or has cancer seen your stand up?
I have done it in some rooms, like big rooms. Some assume like maybe adults that had cancer.
Yeah, statistically,
I mean,
some of
everyone
them
kind
are
of
still.
knows. Yeah, it's definitely different than like the molestation thing because I feel like maybe we all know someone that got molested, but they're not open about it. But like everyone definitely knows someone who had cancer, died from cancer.
Yeah, I would imagine that especially people who have had cancer would really appreciate your humor. That's been the experience that I've had with the molestation set, is like, particularly, I mean, cancer, molestation. I mean, you're talking about like heavy stuff that like is not
Yeah.
generally laughed about. And I think people just enjoy being able to have like a different take on it, and being able to laugh about it. And like my grandpa,
Has the
when I,
kid? I have a question. Does
yeah,
the kid that's dad did it? It's your friend's dad, right?
yeah,
So
my friend's dad, yeah.
I watched the TikTok. You're open about it. That's all wild. But
Yeah.
did you still know that kid? Like, does he know you do stand up? Like,
Yeah, so
did you
he,
see the TikTok?
well, his, my relationship with him is basically as good as it can be given the circumstances. So like, so we had to go to trial after I told my parents, and the guy didn't get convicted. And my parents asked me like, do you want to move away? And I was like, no, like this is my home. Like all my friends are here. I love it here. Um, and so we stayed, and my friend was a year younger than me, but we went to the same high school. And even though the guy didn't get convicted, we had a restraining order against him. But one of the conditions on the restraining order was that he was allowed to come to his son's soccer games. So me and his son were on the same soccer team. And so for all of my high school soccer games, the guy who molested me was in the stands.
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah, which was so wild. So me and his son were always like cordial when we were chilling. Like we weren't like actively hanging out, obviously, and definitely not going to each other's houses,
Yeah.
but we were still like chill. I mean, like it never came up. Like it was never an issue. And it was cool to be able to still have that relationship with him despite everything that had happened. And it got to a point as we got older, we would like chill at like parties and stuff. It was so cool because a big reason why it took me so long to speak up and tell my parents initially was because I thought that I would lose my friend. And that was like, I didn't want that. I mean, he was my best friend at the time. And I at that age,
And did you come clean? Did you talk about it in high school?
I talked about it when I was 10, or I told my parents when I was 10.
Yeah, because it got you Heelys. But I don't know if you care about talk. I just want to know stuff too. Like,
oh, dude, no, it's open book, man. Whatever.
Okay, like, all right. So wait. But here's my opinion. If I'm Jamie,
yeah,
right, and I truly believe that you're lying,
yeah,
there's no way I could be nice to you over that.
I know. Okay? I agree.
Like, let's say I'm the kid that really believes you're. So that's why I think he thinks you're telling the truth.
I think so too, man. I mean, I really feel that. First of all, like, kids don't make that shit up. I have no reason to say that my best friend's dad was touching my dick. There's nothing that he could do to make me make that up other than touching my dick. So obviously it's like, no, kids aren't making this stuff up, but he's in the impossible situation of having to decide between, do I believe my friend and like potentially out my dad to lose his dad? Obviously, if he's going to say that he believes me or that he was sort of in my court at all, like, it would be super bad for the defense of his dad. But I completely agree. And it was cool because it's like, I know that he probably felt like he couldn't say anything if it was happening to him, for example, or if he had seen it happening to me. I totally understand and empathize with him for not saying anything, but I also kind of, just as you said, know that he believes me. And it's just like, it's so freeing, you know, because like, it would suck so much if he was like pissed at me.
Yeah. Did your parents ever like say anything to him at the game?
It was a crazy dynamic at the soccer games because I'm from a small town and the vast majority of people were on my side and believed me and were, you know, still friends with my parents and stuff. But there was a small group of people who still supported the guy who molested me, and they would still let their kids hang out with him and go over to their house and stuff. And so at the games, there would generally be like one other family that would sit with the guy who molested me, but then all of these parents would stand in front of them. They would basically form like a barrier so that the guy couldn't see. And it was like, at the time, it was kind of embarrassing because I didn't want to like make it a scene or anything. I didn't want it to make a big deal. I kind of just wanted everybody to pretend like nothing was happening. But in retrospect, it was like the absolute sweetest thing. And it feels so good knowing that all of these parents were like in my corner, you know, and they were like, they understood how ridiculous it was that this guy was allowed to be here. So they would fucking block his
How
view.
Weird is the other family?
Well, yeah. And the thing is, it's like, you know, in molestation cases, there's always people that aren't going to believe the victim. And I think that even if maybe they did believe me, they didn't want Jamie to just be like isolated and not be able to hang out with kids. And, you know, there's all these reasons why people don't believe the victim and empathize with the abuser, but I think that people are more afraid of that than they need to be, because the majority of people are sensible about these kind of things and know that, like, of course kids aren't going to be lying about this stuff. So it's complicated, but it was really awesome, like, just seeing all of my friends' parents just like actively trying to make things better for me. So it was it was weird because the guy was there. But honestly, my parents and the parents that helped out really made it as good as it could be for me, given the circumstances. So the only thing we need now is to figure out how to get molestation victims a fucking Make-A-Wish or some sort of benefit.
Yeah, they need reparations or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It is insane.
I know, man. And it's so common. It might be more common than cancer. Who knows? What do you know the numbers on like what percentage of kids get cancer?
I don't know, but I know that when I got it, they were like, there's a 6% chance he'll live. And now
what?
Yeah, and now the number is like way different. It's like there's way more research for the type of cancer I had and shit like that. Like the survival
Holy
rate
shit.
went up.
So
I
when you
don't.
were
I
when
think
you were 3, you were told that you had a 6% chance to live.
yeah, yeah.
Fuck.
I know. It was crazy. I think it's harder on my. It was crazier for my mom,
I
to be
bet.
honest. Um, it's also just so funny, bro, because my mom was always so scared of someone doing something to me. That's why I have so many questions for you because of anything. I grew up with this horrible I'm not even gonna lie, like PTSD disorder of I still to this day think I'm gonna get kidnapped and
Really?
yeah, dude, you know that at a young age my mom would show me swear on my life, dude, TV shows of kids that are I escaped, Elizabeth Smart, kids that would get kidnapped or molested and shit. And I was literally terrified of vans, white vans. I would be with my friends biking, and if we were on a suburban street, just in a neighborhood, and a white van was pulling up, I would start preparing. My mom would train me run serpentine if someone ever tried like run
Oh, like a
this
snake. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
run into backyards. Don't run on this run through people's backyards because they
Wow.
and my mom will always be if someone ever says, "Oh, come with me," don't go there. Don't go. If someone ever says "Hey, Malcolm, I want to show you something," and now I grew up with people all the time being "Why are you always so afraid?" I've tried to actually make jokes, stand-up jokes about it, because I'm
Yeah.
technically I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I still think that people have I think it's so common, which I think it is. But my mom literally trained me. It's so weird being able to talk to someone that went through something kind of went through it,
Yeah.
because that was my mom's biggest fear.
Wow. I mean, obviously the way that you feel about it now is clearly because of how it was sort of ingrained into your mind at that age with those shows. Especially when we're that young, graphic content can be so impactful. And one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of figure out the right way to arm kids with the knowledge that they need to defend themselves from people like child molesters. And that's sort of the debate is what can you teach kids and show them without causing harm to them. And I think that you can definitely warn kids about things without necessarily causing them to develop PTSD and things like you're talking about. Your mom's intentions are obviously great though.
Oh yeah, the intentions were fine. That's why I laugh about it. It's just
Yeah.
more so funny. My mom would all the time be "Yo, do you trust that person? Do they ever do anything weird around you?" And I'd be "What? No."
Well, I think that's
Well,
really good. I think it's so important as a parent to be asking questions like
oh
that,
yeah,
especially about relationships that your kid has with other parents.
oh yeah,
But yeah, it was probably, I mean, just based on how you were describing it, it was probably the shows that were the particularly.
oh my god. I guess watching all those documentaries, I'm I heard so many times he offered to show this kid comic books in the back office room, and
Sure.
the kid was never seen again. And I'm so my mom made sure don't go with anyone, don't go off with anyone.
Hey, bro, you might have
But that's the
PTSD, but at
thing.
least you didn't get kidnapped or molested. She
Yeah.
made it work.
There was a kid's dad who always would offer to give me rides home and stuff, but I never even really liked the kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't friends with him, so it was just really weird. And I remember I was biking once by myself, and he pulled over on the side of the road and was "Hey man, you need a ride home?" And I remember I literally was "You get the fuck away from me!" And I biked off. I was in fifth grade, and I remember biking home and being "Mom, this
Yeah.
guy's
Yeah.
dad weirds me the fuck out. He does weird me out.
Dude, I
Never
think that
went with
kids have a feeling about that stuff, and I'm glad that you went with it because you might have been right. I, I
Yeah.
I think that there's kids have an intuition about. I mean, obviously, just people have intuition about those kind of things, but it shouldn't be overlooked. Just how an adult is making a child feel, even if they haven't done
Yeah.
something tangible necessarily. It's there's all sorts of signs and things that they can do that make you feel off, and those things are all so essential to be discussing with your parents. So I definitely commend your mom for doing that. Even, you know, there might be a less impactful, drastic way to do it than showing your kid a bunch of kidnapping films, but at least you didn't get kidnapped, bro. It
What's
is
also
weird.
like something that's really interesting to me is my friend went to go wrestle in college down south, and it was like a smaller school, so everyone that went there was kind of from the area, like South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he had told me how common it is for like guys in high school to have sex with their teachers. Like, you know how you always hear about like a hot teacher having sex with a student?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're not all hot down there, but like he was like, bro, it's like common. Like every town has like a scandal, or like there's also kids that are like, oh, I had a friend that was dating a, and I'm just like, holy shit, that would have been insane. I think that's another interesting, like, why don't we talk about them as pedophiles?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's part of why it's hard for guys in particular to come forward and speak up about these things, because, and obviously this goes for girls too, but people sort of associate you enjoying it because of that fantasy that is pretty well known about. It's like, yeah, fucking your teacher. And it seems way creepier for an adult male to be hooking up with like a really young high school student, for example.
Yeah.
But it's just exactly the same thing in terms of the manipulation, and kids just aren't developed yet. Like that's just what it comes down to, is that you're not able to consent to things yet. So even if you might be into it, you're not at an age where you are being taken advantage of. And it's complicated, man. It's like a huge problem, just as you said. And I don't know why they're not treated as pedophiles more. I feel like I have seen a number of headlines though recently that are sort of painting the women as pedophiles more so. But like even on TikTok, like I'll see
TikToks where it's like, hey,
yeah, the dude, it's like, it'll be like a headline and it'll be like, 2 teachers had threesome with young male student, and then the dude will pop up, be like, hey. So it's complicated, because obviously not all experiences, it's possible to be really into it, but it's like in the way that the system is set up right now, it's like you're a minor and they're adults, and that's what it is. It's tough, because it's like you can't paint every scenario with the same brush and just say, you know, for example, like if a 19-year-old hooks up with a 17-year-old, yes, it's not legal and it's not ideal, but there's a difference between that and a 40-year-old hooking up with a 17-year-old or there's the age gap does play a difference, but it's like, you know, at the end of the day, if it's a minor and an adult, you can't do it. And it needs to be that way. Those laws exist for a reason. I honestly don't even think that I think that it's too arbitrary of a standard to just say that you turn 18 and all of a sudden everything is okay, and then the day before that or the day after that, all of a sudden it's just like, now you're 18, fuck it, date a 40-year-old, you know? It's like it's too I don't know what the solution is, but it seems like it's a little bit too, I don't know. There needs to be more talk about these topics, and people just aren't really doing it. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, you were talking about how Make-A-Wish is less sympathetic when you get it the second time. Was all of this between the ages of 3 and 5? Like both beating cancer and then getting it again?
Yes, and then I was there are these fucking birds outside my fucking, I don't know if you can hear them.
I can hear them. It's all good though.
Okay, so yeah, I had it in between 3 and 5, beat it, and then I was put into like another grade after kindergarten called pre-first, so I could get like a little bit of a head, like I was a little bit behind, like academically, and when I was in that, they sat my parents, because I'd go for checkups, and my parents sat me down, and deadass like told me I had cancer a third time in my lung. Like what? They were well, they basically, I remember the convo like so well, but they were like, yeah, like you went back for your results and we got the tests, and like, you know how we wait on those tests? And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, well, like they saw something in your liver, so like you're gonna have to go and like get surgery on your liver. I remember it was like Thanksgiving or some shit, like, and then I remember having the surgery and like waking up and everyone being like, oh, surprise, you're fine. it was just like scar tissue that had like fallen, because I have tons of scar tissue like internally from like when they did the surgery and like growing and like because they got to do the scar in a way I guess that can like grow with your body. I don't know.
Yeah.
They were just like, oh, it was just like scar tissue. So like
What
I
a
got
great
fucking like
surprise.
opened up like, and they took like a piece of my lung out because of it. Like they literally cut a piece of my lung out where they thought was like a tumor, and then they were like, they like cut it out, and then they were definitely like, oh, never mind, this is fine. Well, I guess I can't put it back in. Like,
Yeah, that's an unfortunately did some irreversible damage there, but at least you didn't have cancer a third time.
yep. And then basically, I was a rock star from my town.
I
Like,
bet.
dude, you would think that it's like, oh, like he has this massive scar on his stomach. Like, how embarrassing. Like, no, like I was at pool parties and like guys were like, yeah, I have abs. And they're like, we don't care. Malcolm has this dope scar on his stomach. Dude, I would tell people like when I was mad young, I'm like, yeah, it's a shark bite because it's like it goes around my stomach like this.
Yeah.
People would be like, what? I'm like, yeah, like almost had these aren't even my legs. Like people, I would literally, it was the best bomb to drop on people. Like people would
Yeah.
be like, yeah, I had it really hard. Like I have asthma. I'd be like, oh, I get where you're coming from. I had cancer. And then they'd be like, wait,
Twice.
what? It's like, I must, you have, you know, the feeling when you can, I don't know, actually, it's not the same, but like, maybe you can agree with me when someone's talking to you and they're like, I had a friend who like, his dad was just an asshole. And you'd be like, oh, word? Well, my friend's dad fucking molested me. And took him to, and then people are like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And then
No,
you're like, all right, kids, gather around. I'm the life of the party for the next hour. Attention's on me.
It's different. I completely get it, but it's different because it's cool to bring up that you beat cancer at a party. It's not that cool to bring up that you got molested by your friend's dad. That's the only difference.
Yeah, people are like, oh, Malcolm, you're a hero, but Sebastian, you're a victim.
And that's what I want to do is change that so that it is the type of thing that is celebrated, that you got out, you survived, you know? It's
Well, can
so,
I be honest with you? You definitely broke like a stereotype I had because I was going to ask about the kid, the Jamie, right? I was
Yeah.
going to be like, well, is Jamie a weirdo now? Because I was going to say, like, because I said to you, like, he was probably molested too, if anything, in my opinion. And then I was going to say, well, is he a weirdo now? But then I didn't want to ask that because I'm like, well, you were molested and you're not a weirdo. So it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've always just had this belief that, like, same thing with like porn stars. Every porn star, most of the time, will tell you like something fucked up happened to them.
Sure.
You know, so I always assumed that like I guess people that were touched as kids were weird. But then I'm talking to you. I'm like you're a completely normal person. You're living in Hollywood. You're pursuing your dream. Like
I think that there's a lot of things that people assume about people who have been abused. And you're right. Like especially like untreated abuse can manifest itself in all sorts of ways when you grow up. And I think that everybody has different perceptions for different reasons. And, you know, maybe part of the reason that you felt that way is because of how your mom had presented it to you or how you were grown up thinking about this topic as like this horrible thing, which it is a horrible thing.
yeah.
But how bad it would be if it happened. And how desperately you wanted it to not happen out of fear of maybe how you would end up, what you would be like if it happened to you. So I totally get that.
That is exactly it. I don't know if my connection cut out, but that is exactly it. You just hit it. You're like a therapist, dude. That's crazy.
I'm glad
crazy.
It cut out a little bit, but I heard crazy. I heard therapist and crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. But yeah, it's like, you know, not only are people that have been abused like not, it doesn't, it's you're definitely affected by it, and it does change you in many ways. But I think that it doesn't. I think that right now it's like the perception of it is that you're fucked forever. You're permanently damaged.
Yeah.
And I really don't think it's like that at all. And it really is as simple as like coming to terms with what happened, speaking up about your experience, and just allowing yourself to process it. I think it's when you don't process it and feel like you have to suppress all the emotions and feelings associated with it, that's when you start exhibiting like physical symptoms, things that maybe you might have associated with being weird. I mean, really, it can affect you in any way. And it's like I said, it's different for everybody. But I think that it's like changing the stigma that is associated with victims in this particular thing is like so crucial for making a difference in how big of a problem it is. Because if people can know that they went through something like this and they can recover from it and be stronger because of it, it's like you won't feel so bad about coming forward. But like so many people have reached out saying that they haven't said anything because they're ashamed or because they're afraid of how they'll be perceived, how people will judge them. And it's like, not only will the majority of people not feel that way about you, but like most people will deeply empathize and appreciate you for speaking up. And even if nobody did that, it's still so helpful for you. And that's like the most important thing. So, yeah, I'm glad you don't think I'm a weirdo.
No, it's just more like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like, I'm not used to meeting someone who says like, I'm molested, and they're like, seem like they got their shit together and stuff like, and then I meet you and you seem like I would never have thought. I don't, but I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's almost like it's just crazy to meet someone.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that that's part of the goal with all of this is like having these conversations is part of it is to show people that like you can talk about this stuff without it having to define you and without it having to, and don't get me wrong, like I've had my fair share of sadness associated with all of this. Yeah. But the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes and the more you're able to process it. And like, I'm still processing. It's an ongoing thing, but it's like, it just doesn't have to be this dark secret that when you reveal it, everybody who hears it has to be so sad and it feels so bad for you. You know, it's like, it's such a common thing. It's like, 20% of kids get molested. It's an astounding number, and yet nobody's talking about it.
Do your parents ever talk about it?
Yeah, it's funny with my parents because after we went to trial, I basically didn't talk about it really until I started doing stand-up about it, and then once I started doing stand-up, my parents and I talk about it like constantly now, like all the time, because it's so helpful because we all went through it together. So it's being able to, and you know, we'll have conversations and things will pop up that I haven't even thought about before. And just by being able to talk about it openly, things will come back to you and different memories and things. And so it's like, I feel like I've been on this sort of healing journey with my parents, and obviously they're healing too, because it was a super difficult experience for them to go through. But we talk about it a lot. We're super open about it. And eventually I want to have them on the podcast too, because I think that it would be extremely helpful for parents to hear from the perspective of parents whose kid got molested. You know, what was that experience like, and how can we avoid it in the future? Because it's so easy to, in retrospect, see all of the things all of the signs, right? All of the things that were going on that shouldn't really have been going on, but at the time didn't seem like a big deal. So I think parents a lot of times will blame themselves for things that even, you know, victims blame themselves. Everybody finds a way to assign blame to themselves, but it's the only person whose fault it is the abuser. And it really is just that simple. And yet it's so complicated in the way that we all process it and handle it differently. But yeah, it's so cool to just like be able to, you know, empathize with somebody. It's like, obviously I didn't have cancer or anything, but it's funny just comparing childhood experiences, and there seems to be a lot of overlap in terms of the thought process that you had at the time, and how funny that is in looking back on it.
It's funny now. Like growing up, I always laughed about it. Then like when I got to college, I think I was thinking about how the seriousness of what happened. And then like I definitely now look back on it. The Make-A-Wish and the stand-up stuff definitely like started helping me. Like not care less about it now. It's not really like a part of my identity. I feel like maybe growing up I was like the kid with cancer, the kid who had cancer, but now it's just kind of like, yeah, I had it like when I was really young. There's also been times where I've thought about it like, dude, I can't believe I fucking had cancer as a kid. Like, I do think about that sometimes. Like, I'm like, what the fuck? That's so weird. Because I really don't feel any different than anyone else who hasn't had it. But like, so yeah, I think I got more, like, I started caring about it once I started thinking about other people, like how it affected them, like probably how it affected my mom or my dad.
Yeah.
But because it never really affected me growing up in a bad way.
Yeah. Do you feel like a sense of guilt knowing that other people have been through, it was tough for other people?
Yeah, I actually have thought about that. There's definitely times where I've thought like, damn, like there's so many kids that died that I knew,
Yeah.
and like I'm here. And
Yeah.
like if I'm ever doing something stupid or if I've ever fucked up, like if I've ever done something bad or gotten in trouble, that's always kind of been like what I've held myself to. I'm kind of like, come on, dude, like you shouldn't be doing that, because you had
Yeah.
fucking cancer and you lived. Like that's how I think. It's weird to say out loud. Like I've never actually said this, but like it is weird to, like I do think that to myself. Like when I was in high school, I got in trouble for partying or whatever, got arrested. My parents had to come pick me up. But to myself, I was definitely like, come on, man. Like it is a little funny but I'm like, come on, like you had cancer and you fucking survived and you're fucking
Yeah.
out here doing this bullshit. Like like
Yeah.
like when you should, like you would hope that like if your kid almost dies and they have that their whole life, then like they go on to like cure cancer as an adult, you know what I'm saying? So there has been times where I'm just kind of like, I do think it made me I definitely have a temper and I can be an asshole to people if they get me to a certain point of anger, but I've always connected with people who I can tell are struggling and it's like not like they can't control it.
Sure. Yeah.
So like if I ever see someone with like a physical disability or physical handicap, like I definitely feel something for them because that was another thing about growing up and like being in the hospital a lot as a kid. Like there's kids there that you meet that don't have cancer. I met a lot of kids that had like fallen off of bikes, hit their head, and then for the rest of their life, they had brain damage.
Yeah.
And like they didn't have cancer, but I still hung out with them in the hospital.
Right.
There's also like kids with like cerebral palsy. I always like would meet in the hospital. Or that's another thing is like a lot of kids with Down syndrome, or there's a type of leukemia. There's like a certain crossover where like sometimes kids with Down syndrome get a rare type of leukemia. So there was like I always knew what like Down syndrome was. Like no one ever had to explain to me like we don't stare at people in wheelchairs because
Right.
I knew what it was like to be stared at. And I
Yeah.
knew from when I was 3, like I remember that shit, like being at the beach and people staring at me because I was bald and like not like, because I also tried to make a joke about that once. Like I looked like a little Mr. Clean, like, the bald, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I will admit this, like maybe as a kid, being embarrassed to have cancer maybe or trying to fit in, I did
Mhm.
participate in the like Timmy from South Park,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
where like you joking around with like your guy friends as a kid and you're a boy or whatever. But I definitely also in the back of my head felt super guilty about it.
Sure.
And I felt like I knew that I'm supposed to feel more guilty about it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
It's like when you go through these things, you have an innate empathy towards people that have been through similar shit. And it's like, it's not at all confined to your own experience. It's like, I was molested, but it's like, I completely feel for somebody like you who went through cancer. That's what I've realized doing this podcast is that like, people will reach out who haven't been abused, haven't had cancer, haven't had anything necessarily comparable to that. It's all completely different, but like in terms of like the trauma spectrum, people will reach out who have been like, and a lot of them will preface like, hey, I haven't been through anything like molestation, but I really appreciate you having the conversation about it. It makes me feel more comfortable talking about what I went through. Some people have said that about like their parents being divorced, for example. And I think it's really important for people to know that like there is no trauma qualification in terms of things being, oh, well, you're allowed to feel bad about that. That fits into this, you know, trauma category definition or whatever. Like,
yeah,
dude, I remember when I was growing up, I honestly thought that my parents getting divorced would be worse than getting molested. That's just what I
really,
thought. Yeah, man. Because it's like when you're going through your thing, I think particularly with molestation, because you try so hard to like block it out and just not. And because of how common divorce is, I was seeing my friends' parents getting divorced, and I was like, fuck, I would hate it if that happened so much. And it's just like the grass is always greener, but I just don't want anybody to ever diminish the significance of what they've been through just because other people have been through what seems to be more in their minds. It's all arbitrary, and it's you know, everybody's got shit. And even if you don't, not having shit is probably some shit. So it's like, I don't know.
exactly.
Everybody everybody can empathize, and I think it's just hearing other people's stories just makes whatever your story is seem a little bit more manageable. So yeah, it's all good. Do you ever are you worried at all about potentially getting it again?
No, not really, to be honest. I've like talked to them and like my doctors and stuff. I've definitely been more worried about like not that, but the effect it had on my body. For instance, like when I was watching the new show Chernobyl,
Yeah.
right? I'm like watching all these people like rotting from radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like keeping in mind that I had radiation. Now it's definitely a different level of radiation, but it's like basically all my organs have been radiated on.
Right.
So, I mean, I put down on my license that I'm an organ donor, but like it would definitely be a waste of time because they're gonna open me up and then realize like there's a chance that they're gonna be like, we can't use this person. Like,
Yeah.
they told me I might not be able to have kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I had this type of medication, right? Where like if you have a certain amount of dosage, you can't have kids. But like, so I'll think about that shit, and then I'm like, well, I had radiation done. I have one kidney. Like, am I going to be someone who, when I'm like 50, they're going to be like, well, yeah, you need to get a new kidney. Like, you have two kidneys for a reason. So
Yeah.
sometimes I think about it like, and they always used to tell me as a kid, like, no, you can live a completely normal life with one kidney.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm like, well, can you? Because like I do drink. I used to not really drink in high school, and then like I kind of just was like, I'm gonna live my life the way I want to live it, and like I'm definitely not alcoholic. Like I'm a recreational drinker. Like I don't have a drinking problem, but like I have heard of people with one kidney saying like, oh, I don't drink alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So then sometimes I do panic. I'm like, fuck, like, am I going to be 60 and they're going to be like, holy fuck, like, you drank like a normal person, but you don't have a normal person's filter.
Yeah.
And everything in my whole life has always never lasted long. Like never lasted. I mean, like, I'm being honest though, like like I literally look at it as like a filter. Like think about it. When you have a fan in your room, you have to clean the fan. It gets dusty, right?
Sure.
Sometimes I'll be looking at that dusty fan thinking like, man, I gotta clean that thing. I wonder what my kidney looks like. Like that's literally, you're asking me like that is the anxiety that comes like PTSD that I have. Like I definitely have PTSD and I definitely have anxiety that is from having cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think to myself, even if I didn't have cancer, I still would have shit for other reasons.
Yeah.
I also have a tree nut allergy. Like I had it rough as a kid, bro. I was allergic to everything. Anaphylactic. Like I almost died from eating a cashew when I was a senior in high school. Like literally my throat closed up and I started getting like my heart was about to have a heart attack, like a second away, and I used the EpiPen. So I have PTSD from that too.
Sure.
Like I grew up never giving a fuck about my allergy. As long as like I knew like there wasn't nuts, like if they said like made in the same factory, I was like, whatever. And then I ate something that I thought was like, I never used to ask. I would say to myself, I'm at an Italian restaurant. I'm going to have this salad. And then they're like, oh, well, at our restaurant, we just happen to put pecans in it. So now if I get a margarita, I'm like, well, are you guys putting like an almond liqueur in it or something? Like, and sometimes bartenders look at you crazy, but then sometimes they're like, nope, don't worry, there's no nuts, because they do have drinks.
Yeah.
They fucking put nuts in. So now, like, I definitely, before dating my girlfriend, I was so embarrassed about it. Like, going to a restaurant and asking at like a pizza place, because now I'm terrified. Because now I'm like, dude, they could be fucking putting nuts in anything.
How did that change after you started dating your girlfriend in terms of your embarrassment?
Well, she just started being like, why do you like, don't be, sorry, I have a banana in my hand. But she's just like, she just kind of like, I remember just always being apologetic for it.
Yeah.
And she was just like, why are you apologizing? Like, it's your fucking life at stake.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have to apologize. And then we've also gone to places where like she says like, stop saying sorry. And then the waiter's like, yeah, dude, don't say sorry. I also work in restaurants as like a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's been so many times where I've seen like, before I was a waiter, I was a food runner, and I would see waiters be like, fuck, man, this kid has a sesame allergy.
Mm.
All right, chef, can you do this? And I was always like, fuck, like that's how the waiters would act when I would tell them. So I kind of felt a little bad, like I'm making it harder on them and stuff, but I don't know. Also, it's just so like pussy to say like,
Nah, dude. I mean, I get that. I think your girlfriend is 100% right. And I'm glad that you feel less like that after starting to date her, because it's like a lot of those things, it's like the worry, you feel the worry of waiters and people reacting the way those particular waiters did. But
yeah,
the reality is, it's like, not only should you not be ashamed, but like no amount of worry will have any impact on what the outcome is going to be.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like no matter how many times you play in your head what it'll be like when you're like, hey, does this have nuts in it? It's like it doesn't change anything. All it does is detract from the moment that you're actually experiencing. It just makes whatever this moment is just shitty, because you're thinking about how bad a future moment is going to be, and most of the time that future moment doesn't even happen.
yes,
It's all good. You know,
yeah.
it's like my mom always sends food back for being too cold. Like that's embarrassing.
It's like a mom trope, dude.
Yeah, it
My mom is the
absolutely
worst
is.
at restaurants.
Yeah, but it's like when you're talking about, it's like it's your life, just as your girlfriend said, and it's whatever experience you want it to be. If you want to be in that anxious state, it's your MO. But I've been a very anxious person in the past, especially we hadn't talked about this yet, but my grandpa died of cancer about a year and a half ago. And I was living with him in LA when I first moved out here from New York. And so I lived with him for like a year, and he had multiple myeloma, and which is like a blood cancer. And I just had never really had somebody that I was really close with die. And it became like I just hadn't had that experience. And it's not unique to me. Everybody goes through this. But I started feeling just so anxious, and I felt like depressed, and it felt like I couldn't do basic tasks. Like I would sleep all the time, and I just didn't really want to confront the reality of it all. And it was like, well, first of all, the most beneficial thing I've found for anxiety is meditation. Are you into that at all?
I I do other things for like that are forms of meditation that like I've convinced myself isn't like something that's really helpful for me is like playing rain music
Yeah, sure.
on YouTube, like 8 hours black screen rain music.
Yeah,
But like
dude.
I also know people that are like, oh, I have like a mantra that's like I say like ziba zaba ziba to myself and like breathe and like I go into another state of mind. And like I'm not someone that could do that.
Mhm.
But or
Why do you think that?
I just haven't I've tried it and I just like every time I just think about I'm too insecure, I guess. Like I'm one of those people that's like this is stupid. Like this like and then my friend's like, no, just try it. I'm like, okay. And like I'm trying and I also can't close my eyes for long periods of time. Like I would love to try the
Sensory deprivation tanks. Yeah.
yeah. But you know
Yeah.
what? Now that I'm talking to you and you're like a super cool guy,
Thanks, man.
I would try it. Because everyone I've also talks and says they do meditation is one of those like yogi, which I also actually do like yoga. I did a yoga acting
Nice.
class, and
Nice.
that 'cause I was do I've done therapy and shit, and like
You know, those, just in the same way that you thought all kids who had been abused were weird. It's like these preconceived notions often get in the way of us sort of actually experiencing what people might be like, or what the experiences that we're talking about might be like. For example, meditation, you know, thinking that all people are like yogis or whatever. It's like, for me, and I can only speak from my experience, but meditation took me out of depression and anxiety.
Really?
Completely. Like, it's not even an exaggeration when I say like it's gone, and it'll come back. But with meditation, it changes your outlook on it. It changes your ability to see thoughts that in the past would have ruined you for an entire day, because you think about them and then your mind's gone. It's just off, and all these hypothetical future scenarios, all the horrible things that have happened in the past, all these things taking you out of the present moment. Like, meditation allows you to look at these thoughts and just observe them without them taking a hold of you. And a lot of the things that you were just describing, it's like, I think meditation is beneficial for quite literally everyone, but especially if you feel like you can't do it, if you feel like you can't close your eyes and you can't sort of just let your mind be for a little bit. That's the people that will benefit from it the most, especially if you're anxious. And it doesn't have to be a lot, you know, 5 minutes a day. The important thing is just getting it into your routine where you have some time every
That's
day.
what I'm saying is like I do my own form of meditation in other ways. Like
Yeah.
every morning I was really depressed in college, and what really helped me was just every morning waking up, getting a cup of coffee and walking.
Oh
But
yeah.
not having, like, I never actually used to walk in New York to just walk. Like, I only walk if I'm going somewhere. But, like,
Yeah.
now in my neighborhood, I get a coffee, I maybe just listen to music, and I just walk. I'll sit on a bench for a little bit. I also got
Mhm.
into reading. Like, reading was is like maybe my meditation
Sure. Yeah.
is like, and I don't have to do it every day, but it's like if I'm gonna sit down and read, just read at least a chapter.
Yeah.
Because if you can read at least a chapter, you can forget about all that other shit.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And then once you're done reading for that little period, you're like you feel refreshed, and you kind of forgot about all those hypotheticals. Like you're like that's what I'll do. Like
Yeah.
I'll wake up in the morning and I'll just walk, and like that actually like changed my life. It's like
Yeah, dude. And it is
I'm
like, because
reading.
just as you said, it's like there are so many different types of meditation. You don't have to sit down and close your eyes to meditate. It can be any
Yeah.
activity. It's just doing that activity fully and not being in your head about the things that you're normally in your head about. So whether that's reading or walking, I completely get. And dude, I did the same thing in New York. It was such a game changer to walk without a destination or a time limit. Not being in a hurry when you're around a bunch of people in a hurry seems to like make it even more
Yeah.
impactful, you know?
New
Completely
York is
get
the
that.
worst place to live if you
Yeah.
have any form of anxiety. And you know what's
Yeah.
crazy? I feel like everyone in New York is like, even people that maybe years ago would be like, I would never go to therapy, are now like, you've gone to therapy? Like, where? Like, and I'm like, yeah, the city, New York
It's got
is
to be the
just like,
most anxious place in the world, dude.
yeah, it's the most, you're stressed about everything. Just like even like this call I was stressing about. Like, yesterday I was stressing about. I'm like, I don't have a phone. Like, there's just always something going on. There's just you can't. That's why I want to. I can't wait to move to California. And I know that going to California, there's going to be their own stress. There's going to be other things, and like
It's way better, dude.
that's what I talked to my therapist about years ago. Was like which you were kind of touching on. It's like something that I have the blessing of right now is like when if it does come back, whatever, it's okay. Like I can admit to myself that like, yeah, I'll be stressing about something and then I'll think to myself, or is it just because I have anxiety?
Hmm.
Like now I do that every time I have an anxiety thing now.
Dude,
Like
that's amazing.
yeah, I've like been able to train myself that like I hit a jewel the other day and I
Hmm.
thought that my lungs were collapsing because I had just been hearing about the whole jewel crisis.
Right.
And like I actually like for an hour thought that I was like having respiratory failure and maybe it was corona. And then at the end I just thought, dude, it's probably that you just have anxiety. Your anxiety's been coming back because you're switching maybe jobs potentially and then, like, as soon as I thought that, 5 minutes, like, I did not think about it for the rest of the night
Yeah.
until just now.
Dude, I mean that's the key. It's just recognizing it and being aware. Okay, these are anxious thoughts and feelings and they will Pass.
I had a friend in acting school who was trying to always get me into meditation and yoga. He got me into yoga, but he's a big Seinfeld fan, and he went to like a Seinfeld like meditation, all these like.
Transcendental meditation. Yeah, I know he's into that.
Okay, that's the thing I was telling you. That's what I can't get into. Is
Yeah.
the, like transcendental, like having a saying or whatever, and like he like what it's kind of like when you hear Joe Rogan talk about the fucking
Isolation tanks.
isolation things. When someone says like, "No, I actually cried when I came out of it,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "Yeah, right." Like, and then like you're like, well, then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, stuff like that has happened to me, and like, why would Joe Rogan lie about that? Like, I do
Yeah.
believe it happens.
Yeah, man. And that's particularly with meditation. It's like there's when I do it, it's just silent. I just sit down, close my eyes, and that's it. And it's like I always thought the transcendental meditation stuff, because I've read about that and was thinking about trying it out. But I don't think that meditation is something that you should pay for. And they were trying to charge like hundreds of dollars for these to
Yeah,
sign up in these sessions. And it's like,
because I love like Tony Robbins.
yeah, me too.
Like I love watching his videos, and I think that everything he has to say is like so awesome, and he says things that I'm like, that's me, like that's whoa. And then you go online and it's like $1,000 a ticket for nosebleeds at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, dude, it's
Dude, the
ridiculous.
fucking nerve of you.
Listen, I wanted to ask you before I let you go. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody who has been through a similar situation to you, or is going through it, or maybe will go through it, in terms of coming out the other side? And just what would you say to somebody like that?
Jesus. I guess I would just say like when you do get through it to the other side, which you will, like don't let it define you or hold you back. I guess that's what I would say. I don't know. It's a hard. It's like it's weird to say it's a hard question because it's just kind of like give me a nice answer, like just be a nice person. But I guess just like
No, bro, there's no right answer.
yeah, like
Whatever you
don't give
want.
up. I guess don't feel alone. I always tell people like whatever you're going through, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Like literally in any situation, like if I feel super depressed because maybe me having cancer as a kid had a massive effect on my parents, right? And I feel really guilty about that. Like there's also another kid that is literally thinking and feeling the exact same thing, you know?
100%, man.
And I think that that's what really gets us down is when we feel like it's just happening to us.
Yeah.
You know, when unfair things, that's why I really relate to people that I can tell they're going through something that's not within their control or they're going through an unfair situation. It's just because like I've been through something, you've been through something where it's kind of like, why the fuck did this happen to me?
Yeah.
And you can't think like that because when you think like that, you're just gonna, it'll never take you anywhere positive. Like it's a great thing to say to your friend that's going through a breakup, you know? It's like, dude, you're not the only one that had these feelings, right? Like, this is what being in love is. This is what being heartbroken is. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so it's kind of like my, she's very open about it. My girlfriend just got diagnosed with MS.
Oh, shit.
And it's like terrifying.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying. But it's now that it's kind of like a couple months through it, it's kind of like, at least for me now, I'm like, this is what it's like to date someone that is told that they have a huge disease, like
Yeah.
like a life-changing disease, which it's not. It hasn't felt life-changing. Like, I mean, I don't have it, but it's like it's not like holding us back or anything. But it's kind of like, holy shit, like this is it. But you know what? There's someone else tomorrow that's going to be told this news.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be someone that's being told, you know, worse news. So I guess that's what I would tell someone that's maybe down on themselves. Maybe it's not advice, but it's just kind of like, just try to remind yourself that you're not the only one.
I love that, man. It's such a universal feeling across all trauma is that you feel alone. you feel like you're the only one going through it. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Not only are there other people, but there's like a crazy number of other people going through exactly what you've been through and can empathize with you. And I think that that's great advice. And also, you know, I'm really happy that you and your girlfriend are together and that you're able to be there with her for that experience.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be so helpful. I think it's just perfect that you guys are together and, like, you know, somebody who's been through what you've been.
Like, man, you hit the lottery, because like I had cancer.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. That's the other thing. I kind of have to sometimes like not. But I also have to like remind myself, like when I was telling you about the kidney thing, it's just like people have, it's different, you know, it is different. So I can't keep saying things like, well, with my doc, like I know what you're going through, because I don't, you know, I don't. So like,
and even though you might not know exactly what they're going through, I think it's always helpful to know that people are empathizing with you. And it might be a different experience. And I know, and I feel the same way. You know, I'm trying to make a habit of not always tying things back to myself and not making it about me. And so I completely agree with you. That being said, you know, it can be so helpful for people to be saying, hey, I went through something similar. And so definitely don't feel bad about making it about you. But just in the same way that she helped you become less self-conscious about your nut allergy, maybe you'll be able to help her out with the MS. And I wish you guys nothing but the best. And thank you so much for coming on here, man. It really means a lot.
So much. Thank you so much, man.
Do you have what's your Instagram or anything that you want to
Oh yeah, my Instagram and my Twitter, it's all Malcolm Comedy, at Malcolm Comedy.
MALCOLM.
MCOMEDY. Oh, and follow me on TikTok too.
Yeah, same thing? Malcolm Comedy?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's Malcolm Comedy. Yeah.
I love it. Malcolm Comedy on Twitter and Instagram. I really appreciate you coming on here, and looking forward to talking with you again soon.
Yeah.
Take care, brother.
You too, man.
All right, that was Malcolm Cills. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.